Welcome to Radiologists, a podcast by University Medical Imaging Toronto, where we discuss the most interesting topics through the lens of Canada's largest medical imaging department. I'm your host, Satish Krishna. Do you know when someone is famous, like truly famous? I mean, you might think it's when they become a celebrity or they have a lot of followers, but it's actually when their name becomes a verb. What do I mean by that? We have Google, for example. Google, as we know, is a search engine giant. But now, the most common expression to say we are searching the web is actually to Google. There are lots of examples: to Uber, to Photoshop, older examples like to Xerox. But what is one of the oldest examples like this? We need to go back to the time of Homer's Odysseus. This was about King Odysseus. His Latin name was Ulysses, who sailed to fight in the Trojan War. So when he set sail, he left back his son, who was an infant at the time, Telemachus. And he left for the war, and he was away for 20 years. He left Telemachus in the ward of his trusted friend. And this friend took care of Telemachus. He was the advisor. He was the protector. He was the one who was the teacher of Telemachus, who helped Telemachus grow into an awesome prince. And Telemachus had his hands full because he had to protect the kingdom. He had to keep his mother safe from all the suitors. And then he had to go and find his father. And along the way, it was this friend of King Odysseus who helped Telemachus. And the name of this friend was mentor. And therein comes the word mentorship. And to speak on mentorship, we have today Dr. Supriya Kulkarni, Mentor Supreme, who's the president of the Canadian Society of Breast Imaging, who's the division lead of Division of Breast Imaging, University of Toronto. Supriya, it's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's a great honor to be here.
All right. So you have always been known as a great teacher, as a great mentor. But I want to kind of go back in your past. Like when you started, what was your personal journey of finding mentors? Did you have great mentors in your career to reach the stage?
Well, that's interesting because as far as I remember growing up, I always wanted to be a radiologist.
Wow.
So it's not that I wanted to be a doctor or, whatever. I always wanted to be a radiologist. And that came from very strong role modeling. One of my uncles, who is a radiologist, so I grew up watching him. And I always knew that this is what I wanted to do.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was like very strong role modeling for me. And when I actually got into radiology, I had like a teacher. I mean, he's still there. And I learned a lot from him. I didn't learn actual radiology from him, but I learned about how to help other people in their career. And he told me one thing, it's like my mantra, basically. He said that mentorship is about leaving legacy. So it's not about, just helping somebody to grow, but what is going to be left behind after you're no longer there. That's what drives me now. Like it's all about leaving behind legacy, right? You have children, you have family. That's all about legacy as well. So what is it that you will leave behind? So that's been like my primary principle of for mentorship. And then when I actually came here, I knew nobody. This was 24 years ago. Actually, I arrived on June 27th, 2000. So it's been 24 years since I've been at like JDMI UHN. And I did not know a single person. And it was very, very interesting to see how I was struggling because it was a new system. It was huge and very impersonal. It took me a long time to develop relationships. Few of my first kind of mentors were like technologists. When I started work, they're the one who kind of took me under their wing. Where can I get stuff? Not necessarily just teaching radiology. So it took me time to figure out like how to do things on my own and struggling with packs and struggling with, voice recognition. And it's a lot of, it was a very overwhelming experience to be on call at this place. It can be very daunting. And then eventually I found somebody that I, liked, and he became my kind of mentor, so as to say. And not only that, he created opportunities for me, which we call sponsorship. And that's where my journey really started. So yeah, it's been pretty interesting.
That's amazing, because it's very interesting you say that your uncle was one of your first mentors.
Yeah.
Because currently I have a niece who is a year and a half old. And every day after daycare, she comes home. And the first thing she runs and comes, sits on my lap, and I'm looking at something from home. And she's just staring at the screen. And all along, I thought I was just keeping her entertained. And now I know that I'm actually being a mentor
Yeah.
for her, trying to get her interested into radiology.
It's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. But that's interesting you speak about that you've had different mentors and different types of mentors. But what are the types of mentorships? What do early trainees, like medical students or residents or fellows, what kind of mentorship do they really need?
So, it's very interesting because at U of T, we have a very enriched portfolio. Like we get trainees from so many different streams, right? So you started with like medical students. So I'm part of the enriching program at the U of T. And every few weeks, I get an email that somebody wants to spend like 2 hours with me, 3 hours with me. That's a lot of commitment when you're trying to finish work, especially in breast imaging. Like we are very engaged with patients, so it's very difficult to carve out that time and inspire someone. But we do it because I want people to be exposed to what I'm doing, like the patient interactions, the thrill of being like, in clinical care, which I think is severely lacking in training right now with the medical students, because you'll be surprised, but most of their classes are still online.
Yeah.
And I was shocked when I was talking to these medical students, and how can you have a med school running online? I said, when do you meet patients? None of them have met patients. So I find that very intriguing, actually. How are these people ever going to become clinical physicians? And we are seeing that degradation already, in terms of interactions. So at U of T, we get a chance. So we have medical students, so I spend time with them. Those are like really primary. They know nothing. But so for them, I would just talk to them about patient interactions, like how we interact with patients. How can we make a difference? So, you have to tailor your kind of program to the needs of that person. So it's not like one hat fits everything.
Okay, interesting.
It can be a global mentorship, ethos. You have to tailor it to that person. Then I have surgical trainees. I'm part of the breast surgery oncology fellowship program. So they come with a very different need. So we have to. So when I work with them, I try to make them aware of what challenges breast radiologists have with surgeons, or how they should behave with their breast radiologists, because that's going to change patient management. That's going to improve the quality of care that we are able to provide for the patient. So then we have our own trainees, the breast imaging trainees. And for them, we want them to become like clinical excellence. So the level of mentorship that they require is vastly different, because that's like more hands-on and more structured. So it varies depending upon who you're training. So
target audience. Yes, that's very interesting, because what you mentioned was that for medical students, one of the primary endpoints is to light that spark, light that fire of inspiration, so that then they end up in radiology. And you're totally right. One of the good things to come with COVID was all Zoom and all this online meeting, but that also has become one of the bad things, because a lot of it is now relegated to these online meetings, that it's difficult to get inspired when they don't see people in action. No. You don't see radiologists in action solving problems. And you're just having a virtual meeting on Zoom, that's quite not going to cut it. So I guess for audience out there, if you really want to be inspired, come in and meet radiologists, talk to them, and you'd find stories of inspiration by chatting. So that is for the medical students, to get them inspired, get them in. For surgical residents, as you point out, it is to give them an imaging background, an imaging grounding to what they're doing. But then comes the point of residency and fellowship. Now, this is interesting and this is different, because medical student, it's usually a shorter time period, because they come to you, they're with you for a week, 2 weeks. They may stay in touch. But with residents, it's usually longer. And with fellows, it's usually longer. And I get the point that we are trying to instill clinical excellence. What are the other forms of mentorship that you ensure that they get to make sure that they develop into a truly multifaceted individual?
So it's very interesting. Again, residents come from so many different backgrounds, right? So each one comes with a different kind of purpose and where they're heading to. And I recently heard the research that was done in the residency program about how residents perceive their relationships with staff radiologists and how they feel. And one of the uh, the theme that recurrently came is relationship. So I focus on building relationships. Teaching comes automatically. If you like someone, you can teach them. I find if you're not connected to a person, you can't teach. So I spend a lot of time developing relationships, which means asking questions about them, who they are, where they're coming from, what do they really want. And I'm like very upfront with them, like especially in our program. I said, are you going to do breast imaging in the future? Like I asked them, because then, that allows me to know where to start.
Yeah.
Right. And then they say, no, I'm doing an MSK fellowship. I said, great. So you need to pass your exam.
Yeah.
So then I would mentor him or them or teach them based on the fact that they need to get through the Royal College exams. And then I explain to them how the program works. And I tell them how, like in breast imaging, how it works, because it's very controlled. Everything is audited. So they need to understand that, right? And I said, in the future, if you're going to do any breast imaging work, this is what you're going to need. So then I lay forward the expectations on the first day, and it allows you to build on that relationship. And I have a very simple thing that I do. I have a simple test.
Okay.
I call it Screening 101. It's about breast imaging, obviously.
Okay.
And they are supposed to write it with hand.
Wow.
Okay. And I tell them, this is a test, just tells me where I have to start. And I want to see how you write.
Okay. So
like the handwriting.
This is to see if they're worthy to be a mentee.
No, everybody's worthy. Everybody's worthy of learning. But it allows like some degree of connection.
Yeah.
Right. So I really start with that. So I give them a Screening 101 test.
Wow.
And they're supposed to write it. And then they remember you for that.
Absolutely.
Like Dr. Kulkarni made me write this test, so it allows you to build a relationship and see where everybody is at. And then you start off from there. But it's very, very true that if you have a relationship, the teaching is much superior because you're personally invested in that person.
Wow.
As opposed to somebody who doesn't show up or is not there, then you don't feel like spending time with them because you just want to get your work and go home. And I've heard that many times.
Yeah.
So relationship is the key thing, and that's what I heard in that research that they had done last year, and it's very true. So that's as far as the residents are concerned. And then of course, all of us spend time with them and do different things, ask them how they're doing, what did they do on call, and like they just need some conversation because everybody is looking for interactions in this day and age. There is not enough of meaningful interactions. Mm-hmm. So I always consider myself as a grassroots worker. I start like right at the bottom and then go up. So I always have that approach. As far as the fellows, again, it's different. There are international fellows, mm-hmm. and there are fellows who are trained here, like in U of T, and then there are fellows who trained in Canada. So there's a very different mix that we have. For the international fellows, they require a lot of help. And you really need to go beyond your, work role into their lives. They require personal help. They require like school admissions. Where are they going to stay? How are they going to commute? Which bank to go to? Like they require like so much help, which actually the university program is not designed to. The onboarding process doesn't involve all of that.
That is totally true.
Right.
Yeah.
And they require a full separate level of engagement, like picking them up from the airport, dropping them off, like so many things. So many things. When I came here, I knew nobody. I had no idea where I'm going to stay, who's going to pick me up. So they require a very different level of help. And then our local people, like they already know the system. So it's very different. Every approach is different.
So what you're saying gives me flashbacks when I came here for a fellowship.
Yeah.
Because one of the first things I had to do was like take the public transport to go somewhere.
Exactly.
I didn't know the common rule that you had to get in through the front of the bus and then get out through the back or the middle. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I came here and I was calling everybody sir, madam, because that's what things are back home. And that is so odd here because nobody does it.
So different.
And then when they said to call by doctor the name, I was calling them by doctor first name. It's Dr. Supriya. That's not how you do it. It's Dr. last name.
Yeah.
So even such minor things.
Yeah, they make a huge difference.
Absolutely. In us getting integrated faster. And that's interesting. So before going on to the different types of it, let me also kind of spin off and ask one more thing. What about the next step? We speak about residency, fellowship, and then early career radiologist.
Yeah.
What about after they become staff? And our previous episode was with Dr. Rakesh Mohan Kumar, and we were talking about mid-career radiology or the mid-career crisis.
Yeah.
And what he pointed out was there was a huge vacuum of mentorship in that period because most societies, most programs do have some structure of mentorship for the rest. Maybe, as you point out, some of them are lacking in terms of addressing certain deficiencies. But he was pointing out that mid-career, there is a significant vacuum there. So at your level, like you're extremely well established, do you still have mentors or do you just now have mentees under you? In the mid-career, how do you approach that?
So I still have mentors. And as you evolve through your career, the level of mentorship changes. Like you need different things. You need mentors for different things. So earlier career person would require a mentor to just get them started. Like what are the things you should focus on? I remember when I was applying for my promotion for the very first time when I approached the radiologist in chief, he said to me, do you have a little book where you have written down what you've done so far? I said, 15 years later, I'm finding this out.
Yeah.
Right? Because I had no mentor.
Wow. Okay.
So 15 years later, you're telling me that I should have documented every interaction in my work life so that I could show my impact. This is something that an early career radiologist should know on day one.
Absolutely.
So that's what I do. So if somebody is starting new, this is what I tell them. These are the ways that you can get promoted. These are the things that you should get involved in. This. Try this, first work with the residency program, work with the, programs that are related to medical students because they help you very quickly to get to your junior promotions. And then when you get into mid-career, by that time, people have their life going on. They have kids and houses and mortgages. They're not ready for mentorship at all. And that's where the stagnancy comes. And you can see across the academic institutions, that is the mid-career radiologists that are not fully engaged in any kind of, academic pursuits because they're so busy. So those are the ones probably you were talking about in the other podcast, require mentorship to push them.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so that requires creating sponsorship, encouraging them to come and do something and give their time and create opportunities for them to speak at conferences, run workshops, or talk at the university rounds, or something that makes them feel that they can also do something. And once you get the taste of that, then it's very easy to push people. But to break the initial barrier, to get them to come out of their shell of, I don't have time, is very hard. I find that the biggest barrier is to how to motivate people to come out and do things. So mid-career is like very dangerous. So you can either like just go right and get very comfortable and do the same thing for 20 years of your career.
Absolutely, yeah.
Or you can really start going rocketing up. So that's where the critical thing. And at the end, or like, let's say when you've reached where you want to reach kind of a spot, then you need to find new avenues which will give you fulfillment. For example, for me, it was getting engaged in advocacy, something which I had never learned. So I've also tried to bring that at level 1 now. Okay, because it took me 20 years to learn to get to this point. it should not happen, because advocacy is very critical to breast imaging.
Absolutely.
That is something as should be learned as a primary, one of your primary core skills. It's like a core skill.
So how do you encourage that?
So now whatever I'm learning, I'm like immediately teaching to the younger radiologists, like new to practice or trainees even, as they go out into different. So that's like my next thing that I want to try to do is like how
are you encouraging trainees to get more active in advocacy as well? Like
I would like to, but I'm just learning myself in that field right now. Like, for example, last week I was called as a witness in the House of Commons.
Wow. Okay.
It was a very unique experience for me because I'd never done this before. Like, politics is not for me, but this was a chance to speak on behalf of Canadian women. That's like giving back, right? So we were talking about some controversy around breast cancer screening guidelines. And so many of us were invited because of our influential positions, so to speak,
and your expertise
and it was a very unique experience. I should not have had to wait for this for 24 years. This is something I should have learned, and I should have been there, like really advocating, like, hard. But for me, it was a learning experience, and it's important to be able to do that, right? So when you get to that stage in your career, those are the things that you start looking for, like fulfillment. It's not necessarily it's going to lead to increase in your income. Like most of the things that I do now, which I like to do, don't generate any income. It's only a time commitment, right? But when you get to kind of that stage, that's what probably motivates you. I mean, it's not like that for everybody, but at least that's how I feel. Like, what is it more that I can do that is meaningful? Remember, it's about legacy for me. So that's the stuff I do now. So that all this involvement in the Canadian Society of Breast Imaging and other things that I do with the university and stuff is what drives you. But I still have a mentor.
That is amazing.
It's very interesting because, when you grow in your career, your mentors may not be growing in the same direction. So that's why you need different mentors in each phase of your life, depending upon what you want to do, like what motivates you. But the mentor is always a mentor. I will still not do anything without running past my mentor.
Wow. So it's interesting because you point out that at different phases, your needs are different. And it's not just one person would be able to help with everything, like mentor in that in Homer's Odyssey. But we need different mentors at each stage. And from what you say, what it looks like is that anything you want to do, let's say you want to set up a workshop, there is a steep learning curve. Where do you go for funds? How do you do the organization? What do you do logistics, and to what accreditation you do it? But if there is somebody who is willing to open doors for you, they don't need to do work themselves. That's where the mid-career radiologists, they're experts. They have all they have all the energy to do it. But it's just that initial resistance, they just become stagnated. And as long as you have a mentor just to help with that initial learning curve, we can get a lot of places. I think the same thing with you and advocacy. Maybe if you had a mentor who kind of got you interested and put you in positions earlier, you could have gone a lot of places. And that brings me to the different types of mentorship. Mentorship, as you were talking about, doesn't seem like a science. It's kind of more like parenting. There is no true science to that. It's more art, depending on the relationships established. And the types of mentorships seem to be very varied. Like one is advisor. It's very traditional. There's a clear hierarchy. You're the advisor, you advise the students. And that is generally what most people perceive as being a mentor. But it's not just that. Then there is the coach, in which the player or the person is doing all the work. You're just there to make them do better. There's an even more passive role called affirmer, in which you just pat them on the back, say that they're doing a good job, just keep them motivated. And then there is this connection brokers. All you do is help them connect with people so that then they can take it on themselves. And finally, as you point out, there are facilitators and sponsors. So when you have mentees or students, you probably would need to approach each person differently.
Yeah.
And how do you kind of go about trying to find out who fits what and what's the best for each? Because again, it probably is not a one size fit
No.
approach,
No.
right?
So that's interesting, because again, it boils down to knowing the person, right? So for example, if it's like let's suppose a new fellow, obviously that fellow is not going to be able to speak at a conference. So you cannot create sponsorship for that person.
Okay.
Right? So they first have to, so it's a two-way street. So the mentor can be excellent, but if the mentee is not responding, then there's only so much you can do for that. Then you have to be the affirmer. Okay, you want validation from me? Yeah, what you're doing is correct. But they're not seeking to change. So you have to also understand, as a mentor, like you can't fight losing battles. So you have to be able to see where the effort is going to make a difference. You provide for everybody, but there will be students or fellows or whoever you're mentoring that they have that spark. So once you see the spark, you fan it. And there are some who are just saying, is it okay if I do this? Yeah, it's okay. If I want to work there, okay, when you work there, you do this. So they're not really looking to, do something new or different. So then you allow them to settle in what they feel is their MO in life. And there are people who want to do more, then you push them and you create them, bring them up on stage and see how they do. You allow them. Yeah.
So it's all about relationships in which
relationships. Yeah.
That's great, because initially, as you point out, find out where the mentee is in their career, and what would be the best way to encourage them and improve them.
Yeah.
And I guess that also kind of goes back, because each mentor might have a slightly different style, which may or may not fit one of the mentees. And then it's up to them to figure out what style would work for them. And that's how they go and seek and find different mentors for them. And this may be an interesting but a controversial question. Does it ever happen that you have a mentee, but you feel that you may not be able to offer them the best advice, and there is a breakage there or an expiry date for that, or just say that, hey, I may not be able to help you, but just go on to XY. They might be able to, you might fit better. Does it ever happen like that?
That does happen, and that can happen. But as a mentor, you should know where your limitations are. Right? Apart from empathy and all the other qualities that are required, one of the key quality of a mentor is to know how far they can take a person and where they should stop. Because sometimes relations can also get toxic, right? So you should know where to draw the line, and you can refer them to someone else. Maybe you should talk to this person. Their situation is more aligned with what you're looking for. So yeah, I'm very happy to do that. At the same time, I'm very happy to share stage with people. That's one of the barriers of mentorship, that the mentor really feels threatened.
Wow. Yeah. Well, you've hit the nail on the head. That does seem to be an ongoing story with a lot of stories that we hear about mentor-mentee relationships, in which after a certain period of time, things may kind of have a falling out. But I guess that's kind of where having different mentors come in, because
and a mentor doesn't equate to being a good teacher.
Yeah.
Being a good teacher does not automatically make you a good mentor, and vice versa.
Correct. In reciprocal, like when you have a good mentor, you learn a lot from them.
Yeah.
When you have a good mentee, the mentee learns a lot from you. Has it ever happened the other way around, in which you have a great mentee and you learned a lot from them? Oh,
yes. Yes. You learn a lot from the mentees, because they bring their own skill sets to you, right? I've had so many, like, just very simple things, not even a mentor, but I have so many reports that I have modeled off from the residents.
Okay.
Because I just love the way they had put it, in the report. So I'm very open to learning from everybody I meet. So it's a very, I don't like to, there's something that my husband had said to me, that if you spend time with someone or something or somewhere, you should have something to show for that time. So I don't like to waste my time in interactions that are not going to give me something. So I'm very open to learning from anybody.
That's amazing, because a common thing what a lot of people think is that experts in academic centers, they're experts because They did residency, they did fellowships, they trained with a lot of great people, and that's why they're experts, because they also interact with great clinicians.
Yeah.
It's also because you have this ongoing supply of new fellows and new residents coming every year, and you're constantly learning new things from them.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps you at the top of the game. And speaking of time, now that you have to do all of that because you have a bunch of mentors from whom you're getting input and advice from. And then you have all these mentees who are coming to you for advice.
Yeah.
And then you're involved in advocacy and teaching and all of that. And the age-old question is, how do you balance it all? How do you kind of find the motivation to do it? And as you point out, these are things which don't really have a financial remuneration for you.
No.
So it becomes the easiest things to cut it out. For example, when you get an email saying that, hey, this medical student wants to spend time with you, it's the easiest thing to say, oh, I'm having a busy clinical day. I have a few meetings that day.
So you share. So I have some really good young colleagues who are willing to take up some of that responsibility. So you even have to teach mentorship.
Okay.
Right? Otherwise, where's the chain going to continue?
That's a recursive
So
loop.
I pass on some of the stuff to them. And not just at our site, across sites. So I'll pick somebody from Sunnybrook or somebody that I know, who might be able to do that. So I pass on the opportunities to them. That's also like sponsorship, right?
Yeah.
So I can work with trainees. Here, you try it, right? So I try to do that. I try to give up some of my work to them and be available if needed. And sometimes
how early should people start mentoring juniors?
Mentorship is like a ongoing thing. Anybody can be a mentor. Right? If you have some more experience, you can always share how you do it, right? So there's no restriction to when you can mentor. And some people just realize it brings out self-worth when you mentor. And that is good for your career. And how to find a mentor, it's like based on relationships. You have to talk to many different people and work with different people to see if their style really matches yours. And is it something that you're looking for? Are you willing to work with a person who's very intrusive, will ask you everything about your life? Like within 5 minutes, I know everything about a person, right? So if that works for you, then it's a good relationship. And then it works. So you have to find that person who is going to continuously support you, even if you go beyond. I have people contact even after they leave the residency program, even they'll email you from anywhere to ask you something, and they're not even doing breast imaging, so it's the key thing is relationships.
That's amazing. That's a great way to end this, because at the end of the day, at the heart of it all, it is the relationship. Mentorship does not necessarily, as you point out, need to be formal. Most of the time, it's extremely informal. It is almost invisible mentorship. It is somebody whom you go to for advice. And that person is interested in you and who has the time and energy to provide advice to you. It may be somebody who is ahead in life than you. It may be your peer. It may be your junior. But anybody whom you go to for advice, who you take advice from, who you take inspiration from, who you take any form of help from, I think that relationship is mentorship. Going back to a story of Telemachus and Mentor, it is been said that Mentor was actually Athena in disguise. Athena is the goddess of wisdom and intelligence. And what Athena instilled in Telemachus was called menos. Menos is a closely related word to mentor. And menos means heroic strength. Strength not just in physical prowess, but in mental fortitude, to give them the ability, to give them the inspiration that they can take on the world, and then they can come out with flying colors. It's been famously said that we walk on the shoulder of giants. We have reached this spot because we literally stand on the shoulders of our predecessors. And what we can give back is the same thing for our next generation. Put them on our shoulders, lift them up to great heights, and that's how success is built. So if you're looking for great mentorship, there's no better place than University Medical Imaging, Toronto. Ladies and gentlemen, That was Dr. Supriya Kulkarni, President of Canadian Society of Breast Imaging, Division Lead, Division of Breast Imaging, University of Toronto, and me, your host, Satish Krishna. See you in the next one.